Hey, what's up you guys? It's Zach with PCBros, and today we're gonna be building a budget gaming PC, and I'm gonna show you step by step how to put this together and how to recreate this pretty simple and affordable budget gaming PC. All right, so these specs right here are very budget, but this overall makes a pretty awesome gaming PC. Here's some of the benchmarks on this gaming PC so you get an idea of what it can play. So the specs include an Intel i3-12100F, a 1 terabyte NVMe, 32 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM. This is RGB, this is gonna be very nice. We got the ASRock B660M Pro RS motherboard, very nice for budget gaming. And then right here we have the Seago TEP 650 watt 80 plus gold. We got a GTX 1650, all housed in the Apevia Prodigy. So now I'm gonna go in the step by step on how to put all of this together. Here is everything you'll need to build this budget gaming PC. You will need a Phillips screwdriver. You will need a smaller Phillips screwdriver, a PH1, for all the M.2 screws. You're gonna need some snip snips, a box cutter, and you will need this for the standoffs. And get plenty of zip ties to get that good, clean cable management. All right, first step, we are going to put together the motherboard. Now, we like to put on gloves here because we sell these PCs and we don't want to get oils all over the PC parts. Let's open up this nice motherboard here and leave everything in the box for now except the motherboard. If your motherboard comes with a little protection under, just lay it flat on here. If it doesn't, I would lay it on the motherboard box. If you're building on a build mat too, that just adds to the safety. So what we are adding to the motherboard is the CPU, RAM, and storage. You can do it in whatever order you want. I usually just go with the RAM first because it's the most fun to put in. So with the RAM, we want to go in this and this alternating sockets here. So I'm just going to open these up. Sometimes your RAM is going to have 2 locks on each one. RAM can only go one way, so you don't need to worry about putting it in the wrong way. It will not fit. You do not want to force the RAM if it's not fitting. That would not be good. You want to line up the notches on the RAM with the notch on the motherboard. And with both fingers, you want to push down till you hear a click, and then we'll do the same on the other side. So RAM is done. Now let's get that storage out. So M.2s are very easy to install. We just need to find out where exactly we're going to put it. This motherboard has 2 places. It has this one on the bottom, and then this one with the armor plate here on the top. You could put it in this one if you wanted. Make sure you check your motherboard's compatibility depending on what CPU you have and the type of storage, whether it supports. Usually the one with the armor on it is going to be faster. If you just have one, you can just do that. If you plug it in the wrong one, the storage will not show up when you boot it. And then in that case, you know that you just need to move it to the other one. And now we have the storage and the RAM in. We just have the CPU. I'm gonna go ahead and open up the CPU box. And for this particular build, we are using the stock cooler as well. So now we are going to push down the lever and open up the CPU slot here. There are usually a couple indications on where the CPU goes. There is usually an arrow. You will see the arrow on the CPU as well. Sometimes it'll be an arrow, sometimes it'll be a dot, and then you see it's on here as well. So you'll get a few indications on what orientation the CPU will be going. So you're going to gently place the CPU in the socket. Pushing this down, we're gonna leave that cover on. It will pop off. As we push the lever down, sometimes it'll require a little bit of force, and then this will just come right off. So now we have the CPU cooler to install. I usually like to go cable on the top right because that's usually where the CPU fan header is. So you just rest all 4 of these in their respective holes, and now they should be ready to click, going alternate screws here. I like to put one hand on the fan with light pressure and then one finger on until you hear a click. We're gonna go to that other side to make sure it's even. So you wanna make sure you hear a click on all 4 of those CPU fans. If you did not hear all the clicks or are having a little bit of trouble, I do have a full video on Intel stock cooler fans right here if you want to check that out. The link will be down below. So now we need to plug in the header, which will be in the top right. It will just say CPU fan 1 right over here. This can only go one way. There's usually a lip, and then we press in and it is in. Now with this excess cable, we usually just like to tuck it in between the RAM and the CPU cooler, and it will kind of just stay there nice and neat. So now that the motherboard is prepped, we are going to put it in the case here. But first I need to clean up because my workstation's getting kind of crazy. Make sure you keep the IO shield from the motherboard close. We're gonna be using this pretty soon. Next up, we are going to unbox and take out our case. I have already removed the side panels here. The only thing I have left to do to prep the case before putting in the motherboard is, if you notice right here, we have this cable that is crossing through, making it kind of hard for the motherboard to connect right here. It's kind of blocking. This is just how it comes in box. So what I usually like to do is just unscrew these screws and then turn. So this will be going up and through the hole here. If that doesn't make very much sense right now, this is kind of a nitpicky thing that we like to do just to make that cable management a little bit better. So I'm gonna unscrew all 4 of these fan screws, and then we are going to tilt it 90 degrees. So we're just gonna take this fan after all the screws are unscrewed, and we're just going to give it one little turn here, and now you can see that this is going more toward the top. And when we push the motherboard in, it will be more like this. So now that this should be open for the motherboard. Now let's add all the screws back. If you have a different case, this step won't really mean anything to you because this seems to be mostly a Prodigy thing. All right, one last thing to do before we put the motherboard in the case is we need to make sure there's enough standoffs matching up with the motherboard to the case. The easy way to do that is to count the holes on your motherboard and kind of visualize and line up where they all are. It looks like I am missing 2 here, here and here for this hole and this hole. So your case should come with hardware, usually in the back. In this bag here, we'll have more standoffs. Again, I just need 2 standoffs here. It's really hard to do with my arthritis gloves. And the standoff is going to look like this, which fits perfectly into this 3/16 tool. And this is what we're going to use to screw it in. So I'm going to add these standoffs to the holes needed, so each hole on the motherboard is resting on a standoff. This is very important to make sure that your motherboard is not bending at all. You do not want that. All right, all the screws are in. The case is prepped. The motherboard is prepped, and we are ready to go. So I just laid my case flat right here. Let's take our IO shield that should be located in your motherboard box, and to line this up properly, we are going to look at the motherboard and then match this up with the motherboard so we know it's going the right way, and it looks like it goes this way. Now, something I like to do with these, just to make sure it's not a problem in the future, is bend some of these tabs back, because sometimes these tabs will block the ports. IO shield's very easy to install. Lined up correctly, you just add some pressure and it pops right in. No screws needed for that. Now we take the motherboard and we lower it down. Holding the CPU fan, we carefully lay the motherboard on all of the standoffs we just added. And if you did it correctly, the holes, you should see the standoffs in all of those, so you know they are ready for the next part, which is screwing it in. So we're going to use these screws here that come with the case, whatever case you got. And this one actually has the lip on it. Let's see if I can get that in focus. So we're gonna be using these screws right here. All right, I thought that other screwdriver was magnetic tip, but it wasn't. I would highly recommend getting a magnetic screwdriver for any PC stuff. Most of the time, it's going to require some precision. And if you can't do what I just did there, because the screw is not holding on to the screwdriver, this will be kind of frustrating. All right, I have all the screws in. Going to go ahead and put this back up right. And we are looking good so far. The next step, we get to the fun part. We get to plug in these cables. I like to plug in all of the motherboard cables from the case before putting in the power supply. I find that easier to cable manage everything as I go. So sometimes you'll see these little bread ties on here. We'll just take those off. And we will just go through one by one here. Can do them in any order. I'm going to start with the USB 3 plug. I'm gonna add some zip ties before plugging it in, just to keep everything tight. So adding one here in the top, adding another one to keep it all together, and then adding one here to the bottom hook, just to lock it in place. Now we take snip, 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 and snip. So now this keeps all of these together looking good. It usually goes on this side. I like to peek at the other side to see where it is on the motherboard. It looks like it's a little bit higher there, so I can get away with putting it through this top hole. You can put it through the bottom if you want, but this, I think, would keep the cable management a little bit tighter. Just making all these little decisions to make cable management a little bit cleaner. You're going to push it in until you hear a click. This one only goes one way, and we got some cheap gloves because mine's already breaking a little bit. And because we love our cable management here, I'm going to go ahead and add another zip tie right here just to keep it together. Now we have the HD audio and the USB plugs. These go through the bottom. The HD audio is pretty much always gonna go right here on the bottom left. So I'm gonna feed that through to that bottom left of the motherboard right here. These will be labeled on your motherboard if you are not sure. And then we will go ahead and take the USB, which I will feed through the right here, because I know my USBs are right here. These have the plastic cases on them. And this just helps the cable management be a little bit cleaner. And now we have the front panel. Depending on what case you have, sometimes you'll have an LED switch kind of mixed upon with the front panel cables. We do not need this with these. So I just put this to the side and I feed all of the front panel connectors here on the bottom. Usually it's the bottom right of the case. And this will be labeled as well. I'll have a little graph somewhere on screen here that shows closer on where these plug in, because you want to make sure you plug these in right or your PC will not work. So I like to do the bottom left and then bottom right and then work my way up. That way it's a little bit easier, because sometimes I'll fat finger it and then unplug something, because these are a little bit tiny. So it goes HD LED here on the bottom left, with next up being the reset switch on the bottom right. And then I like to feed these through as I go. And then we have the plus and minus. You want to go in that order here on the top left. And then on the top right, we have the last one, the power switch. We're going to pull all the excess through the hole, and there we go. Front panel done. Before we put in the power supply, I want to spruce this up a little bit, keeping all the cables together. All right, we got our power supply with fan facing down. We are going to slide the power supply in and line it up with all the 4 holes in the back here. Now these screws are different than the motherboard screws here. They are a little bit thicker. So just make sure you're getting the right screws. These should come with the case as well. And it's usually a good practice to screw alternating sides here. So I did the bottom left. Now I'm doing the top right, just to keep everything even here. Nice. All right, power supply is in. Got a mess of cables right here. Let me show you where they go. Doesn't matter which one you start with. I am going to start with whatever one I can find in this bunch. Looks like we're starting with the CPU cable. I'm gonna start with the CPU cable here. This will go in the top right. We will flip this over, and the CPU cable can only go one way. It has this little lever, usually on the top, and we will match it with the lip of that port here. Applying a little bit of pressure, you should hear a click, and now the CPU cable is in. Next up, we get this big one right here. This is the 24-pin connector. It will usually go right here on this top hole. So to keep cable management clean, I'm going to put it underneath the other cables. Go here. This one requires a little extra pressure usually. And just like the CPU, it only can go one way. So we're just going to line it up and make sure that lip lines up with the hook. And then we are going to push and then wiggle on all the sides, making sure it is fully in. So now we have 2 in. We are actually almost done here. To keep cable management a little bit tighter, there's a lot of excess cable here. We usually just like to push this in and under the basement. to hold most of those cable. And then next up, we're going to take some of these cables we don't need, like the Molex connection. We do not need that for this build. So we are going to kind of bundle it up. You can zip tie it if you want, and you are going to feed it through the back so it doesn't get tangled up. And we're just going to hide that here in the basement. Because this is not a modular power supply, meaning we can't take out the cables, they're all gonna just have to chill in the bottom here. We need a PCIe cable, so we will keep that. It looks like we do have 2 of them, so I'm going to take one of them and do the same thing. Feed it through the back so it doesn't get tangled up. And we are going to hide this in the basement, just pushing that back. And then we have some SATA cables, and we have this SATA with the Molex. I'm gonna go ahead and take that and put that in the back as well. We only need 1 SATA cable for this build to power the RGB. So we got 1 PCIe, we need that 1 SATA, and then this one actually has an extra CPU. So that will get in the basement as well. So I am going to take a zip tie and zip tie all of these together just to keep it one so they don't come undone, keeping everything tight. I might even do another one here just to keep that tight. Nice, nice. Snip, snip. You know, I'm just gonna take this one off. I'm just gonna take these off. At this point, I don't need them. So I'm gonna zip tie here on that CPU side, giving that side some love. Using both hooks to keep it very tight and so it doesn't move around. And now we're cooking. The only things we have left are the PCIe and the SATA. So I am going to, before installing the SATA, take this little peely off and stick that to the power supply. You can really put it anywhere. Sometimes you can put it there if you want. This hub has this SATA port right here. We're going to take one of those SATA cables and connect them. Now, SATA is a nice strong connection. You should hear a click there. And then we're just going to take the rest and put it through the basement. And now all we have left is the PCIe cable for the GPU. We are first going to check what kind of ports we are working with the GPU. This one is the 6-pin, which we have an 8-pin here, but most of these can be adjusted down to a 6-pin. You see here, you just slide this one off. Sometimes it requires a little bit of force here. Now we just have a 6-pin. So I'm going to peel this down a little bit, and we are going to zip tie all of this together and then snip. So we will feed this through the basement, through the very crowded basement, into that hole in the front. And then if we flip over, you want it sticking out ready for that GPU. So to get the GPU in, we're going to undo this. Usually just requires like one little screw. Unscrew that top one here. This will be lined up with the top 2 lanes, and then we will break off that bottom one. And you're gonna take this screw off completely because we're gonna need it to keep that GPU in place. These are the same screws as the power supply, so if you do lose them, you should have more in the case bag. We're going to push down that lever for the GPU, line it up with the holes that we just opened, and push until you hear a click. You don't want to do too much pressure, just enough to get it in. And then we are going to connect our PCIe cable. To keep this locked into place, we are going to screw that screw back in the hole here. And we do not want to do it too tight, because if we do it too tight, these ports will raise up a little bit, and then you won't be able to plug in any display. So you want to just tight enough where it keeps it in place. And then I'll add a second one there on that second hole. All right, now we need the moment of truth. I'm going to plug this in and see if it works. That's a good sign already. Good, the RGB works. Everything turns on. Oh, I forgot about the LED switch here. So that just plugs in right next to the RGB hub. This actually powers the switch that changes the colors. I like to add a zip tie here so this doesn't come undone. Troubleshooting 101 right here. All right, take 2. Now we can change colors.
Congratulations, you just built a budget gaming PC and it turned out pretty awesome. If it didn't turn out so awesome for you and you had some issues similar to I did, but you can't figure it out, comment down below and I'll try to help you out. Sometimes it's as easy as you forgot to plug something in at the end. If you want to know what to do after you've built the PC, like how to install Windows, drivers, and stuff like that, check out this video right here. The link will be down below. This is a very helpful one to do all of the post-build stuff. PCBros is doing a Memorial Day sale starting Memorial Day for 5% off using code MEM5. So if you'd rather buy a pre-built and enjoy gaming right out the box, that is an option. Thank you all so much for watching. Hopefully you found this helpful, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.